Yo, I'm Ed. Welcome to Jesus Mentoring Ministries. This is our second in a little series on that verse from Matthew 11:28. Come unto me, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Such a cool verse. Jesus makes a promise that if you're weak and heavy laden, and if you come to him, he will give you rest. If you take his yoke upon you and you learn from him, you will find rest for your souls. That's his promise. So what we're doing and what I've done with people over the years is an acid test. What's an acid test? Great question. If you buy a car and they say it gets 30 miles to the gallon, well, if you put 1 gallon of gas in and you only go 26 miles, it fails the test, right? It does not perform as it was promised. Well, this is a good verse to put it to the test. Is Jesus the real deal? He says, if you're weak and heavy laden, you come to him, you take his yoke upon you, learn from him. He promises rest. And so I'm going to challenge you, encourage you, exhort you for the next 6 weeks. Try it out. What have you got to lose? Especially if you're struggling right now, you're wrestling. What do you have to lose? Just see if Jesus is the real deal. I know people are like, well, how can you really believe? Well, here's a good way to find out, right? If you don't have rest, you're anxious, and you try this out, and suddenly you have this peace that you can't explain. Maybe Jesus is the real deal. Okay? So last week, I talked about Cheeto Mouse. And the story of the adage of Cheeto Mouse was, here was a field mouse that found what he thought was a good place. It seemed like a good idea at the time to go into the store and to live in this bag of Cheetos up on a shelf where there's no cats and everything is temperature controlled. But at the end of the day, this was a horrible decision for him. He ended up black and greasy and with orange teeth that were peeling around, and eventually would have caused his life, because field mice are not created to live on shelves of stores. They're created to live in the field. Like you may be engaging in different forms of avoidance behavior, and it seems like a good idea at the time. It seems great to be on painkillers. It seems great to be pursuing relationship after relationship. It seems like an incredible idea to get a degree and make lots of money and, live out in the suburbs. But that's not what you were created for. And if you're not fulfilling what you were created for, you are hurting yourself. And we're going to find out what you're created for as we go along. But our first lesson with Cheeto Mouse, we got to see what we're created for. The second lesson. And again, and I say this as a person who I love. I have a group of guys who have been in prison that I encourage and exhort to live life, a normal, healthy life. It's not easy. Life is a challenge. And I'm very brutally honest with them, because life is life and death for them. If they get back into drugs or whatever else, it will kill them. I don't want to see them die, so I tell them the truth. Same way I'm going to tell you the truth. And as I said before, I say all this, the purpose of these videos is to start a dialogue. I want to hear from you. I want to hear what Jesus is doing in your life, or how you're struggling to believe. All right? So, I'm going to tell another story. And then we'll make our lesson from it. There is, and I think there's still reruns, but there was such a cool show called dude, you're screwed. And the premise was you had 8, 9 friends. Some of them were survivalists. Some of them were retired special forces. They're all buddies. And what they do is they will single one guy out. The rest of them will capture him. They will put him in an impossible situation. They'll put a life monitor on him. They'll give him a few things to help him to live and thrive. And he's got 100 hours to get to civilization. The first episode I watched and I loved, was they took this big dude, big black Navy SEAL. They captured him. They dropped him by helicopter on top of a dormant volcano in Iceland. And they gave him a pink overstuffed bunny, and they gave him a Norse shield. And one of the guys was kind enough to give him a Speedo swimsuit. And now he's got 100 hours to get to safety. And it's cool because, a cameraman goes along and he kind of processes where he's at, and you see what he does to survive. And I love woods. I love surviving in nature. And so I love seeing how he figures out which direction's north, how he decides which direction to go, and the various things that he falls into. And, so it's just a great show. It's just hilarious. These guys are my kind of friends. This is the kind of thing I would love to be a part of. So, at any rate, one of the other episodes, they have a guy who was in Vietnam, who was a ranger, and they dropped him in the Gulf of Mexico in the middle of the night, out of, I think, a plane or helicopter. They dropped him, and they dropped a raft. And so he's in the raft, and it's, the water in the Gulf is like 70 degrees. And there's 3 inches of water in his raft, and it's dark, and he is shaking. I mean, he is just violently shaking because of the cold. And he talks about what it was like to be in Vietnam, where he would say, sometimes you got called to do missions behind enemy lines, and they sucked. And he said what they learned to do was to embrace the suck. We got to do this one way or another. So whether we like it or not, we need to embrace the suck. I'm going to encourage you that you need to do the same in your life. What do you mean, Ed? Well, what is the suck in your life? I know there's some of you who have not had just a peaches and cream childhood. There are some of you that you have been treated horribly, and you haven't dealt with it. There's people that have done things to you that are so wrong, and there's no box in your head to a compartment that you can fit it in. And so your mind just keeps playing with it and playing with it. And I'll use the illustration. It's like this dead carcass that you carry around, and you don't like it, and it smells, but it's there, and you can't get rid of it, and it just wears you out. You have dreams, and you can't avoid it. If you're filling your life with junk to avoid it, you're not dealing with it, right? If you're spending all your time on Instagram and you're just filling your life with social media, you're not dealing with the problem. You need to face it. You need to embrace the suck. Ed, you don't understand. I was raped. I do understand. You've been violated. And the only way you're going to get through it is to face it. Don't face it alone. All right? This is where Jesus comes in. This is where finding other people who really care, who will really listen. Get those people in your life and start dealing with the issue. Okay? Don't deceive yourself. You know, I got friends. I got a friend I love that is a serious alcoholic. He refers to his beer as a canned sandwich, and he probably has a dozen canned sandwiches a day. And he's convinced it's just not a problem, and he makes light of it that, hey, I'm just having a canned sandwich. It's a lunch in a can. How can you go wrong? But the reality is it owns his soul. So I'm going to ask you, friend, it's time to do a little inventory. Is there anything in your life that owns your soul? Is there a person? Has someone done you so wrong that they are renting out space in your head for free, where all you can do is think about them and think about them and think about them? And it just wears you out. Do you stay up all hours of the night because you really don't want to sleep? Because when you sleep, the nightmares hit, right? Sucks. If you want that to stop, guess what? You have to embrace the suck. But again, this is where Jesus comes in. Come unto me, you who are weak, and you who are heavy laden. Friends, this is the heavy laden. Do the inventory. Look at your life. What is the load you carry? This is important. When I worked at Drug Treatment Center, when I started, and we looked at the 12 steps of AA, the first step is that you admit that you are weak and powerless. And then step 2 is that you accept that there's a higher power. And at first I thought that was wrong. I thought, no. First you got to believe in God. Then deal with your struggle. I've seen the wisdom, and I understand the wisdom, that unless you first accept where you're at and what you're dealing with, you're not ready to accept God. God does not want just a happy, frou-frou part of you, okay? He wants all of you. And that means that heavy load, that stuff you're carrying. Now, it may be that you haven't dealt with, or, where someone's hurt you. Maybe you've hurt someone. And that's a load that is just so heavy. Maybe you've hurt someone really, really bad. You've told someone something that just grieves your spirit. Or maybe you physically hurt them. Maybe you're one of those people who's killed someone and you see that frozen face every day. Every day you see that face. You cause an accident. You cause someone to be in a wheelchair. And you can't let it go. Okay. It's time to quit drinking. Time to quit social mediaing. It's time to face it. It is time to embrace the suck. Hey, I care about you. And again, I want to hear your story. I want to hear what you're going through. I want to talk about how Jesus can help you, because you are not alone. Hey, take care.